Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their EdTech ideas into profitable businesses. Arun, hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show. Thank you so much for taking your time out for being here with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me. Excited. So I'm curious, how this goes. So let's get rolling.
Great, Arun. Arun, first question is very simple. So, what do you do now? What are you doing now?
So I'm just, so I didn't realize the first question would be a very hard question.
I was sarcastic when I said it's a simple question.
So what I'm doing is I currently have co-founded two companies. So the first one is called Crack Verbal, where we help people make smarter career decisions. We help them take tests such as the GMAT. We help them with admissions, but largely we help them with career decisions. So that's the first part. And the second one is the holding company is called Perspicacity, and we have two brands. One is called English for India, and then we have a new brand called Vizerly. And over there, we are in the communication space. So, English for India, as the name suggests, we have a lofty goal of helping people in India learn English, right? The second one is Vizerly, which is a business communication. So, we do foundational courses, we do courses for management, and that's, yeah, it's a B2B kind of play. Crack Verbal is B2C. So,
Got
pretty
it,
much
Arun.
that's what's happening.
Got it, Arun. Arun, obviously, just like any other podcast, before getting into it, I kind of, the easiest resource for me about anybody is their LinkedIn page. And, I was going through your LinkedIn and it says, you founded Crack Verbal about 12 years back. So you've been running Crack Verbal for about 12 years now, a decade, a little more than a decade. So before that, I see that, you were working on different, in different capacities. So my question to you here is, we'll go back a little. If you can walk us through your journey, how it all started, and up until the point you decided that you're gonna jump into entrepreneurship. So if you can cover that aspect, I think we can talk about other things after that.
Great. And before I get into that bit, I just want to tell that nothing in my experience or education really prepared me for what I'm doing today.
Right.
So what you'll see is like a bunch of things, which when they happened, as the famous Steve Jobs things, connecting the dots. When they happened, I didn't realize, but I think in hindsight, I can see how those influences were important. So
Got it.
I am from a Tam Bram family, right? So Tam Bram is very conservative. Typically, we become doctors, engineers. My both my brothers were engineers. My dad was a chartered accountant. My
Right.
grandfathers were doctors. So when I grew there, entrepreneurship for us was something that we just didn't do, right? So
Right.
that's not something that I really got from my family. In fact, the only entrepreneurs that I would see would be these Bollywood movies, right? And back in the 80s, 90s, they just showed all these villains to be like businessmen, correct?
Right.
So you imagine Amrish Puri coming out of the swimming pool with a bathrobe, and you think, smoking a cigar, and you think entrepreneurship is all those, negative things, right? That's how at least my initial association was. Uh, I grew up in a place called Badodara, which is also called Baroda. In
Yeah.
fact, interesting trivia is, Kolkata, Mumbai, all these guys, they changed, all these places, the names changed well into the 90s. But Vadodara was the first name that was changed back in 72.
Oh, right. From Baroda to Vadodara.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Baroda is the Bank of Baroda, right?
Right.
That's the thing. So it's in Gujarat. So I think somewhere Gujarat also played an important role in this entrepreneurship journey. Like you see people, and see, Gujarati mentality is very different from, let's say, what a Bangalore startup mentality is, right? Like I can make a pencil for like 2 rupees, sell it to you for 5 rupees, make a margin of it. It's a business, right? And So I did my schooling, I did my college. I actually ended up, as I said, the Tambram influence still stayed. I ended up doing my master's in computers. And because I did my master's in computers, the most logical thing was to get a job in Bangalore. And that's how I made my journey from
Oh, right.
Vadodara to Bangalore. And it's then, once I came to Bangalore, that's the first part of my IT life. So if you see my career progression, I started off as a developer and then I became a project manager. So the journey of IT was very interesting. And, initially when I started coding, I think till that point, education served just as a means to get to an end. I wasn't really thinking what is it that I wanted to do. I
Right.
just wanted to get a job. But now that I had a job, I realized that I was terrible at programming. Terrible would be an understatement, uh, but I still managed to survive for a few years, and then I got into a project manager management role, and over there I was able to really get to my strengths, and I was kind of doing that. Uh, Alongside my job, there was another thing that I would do, like a part-time gig. So I started teaching. So what happened back is I was taking, this is late 90s, before online and EdTech came. So we had like the MBA and the MCA entrances exam, right? So I had
Right.
taken some of these exams. I had done fairly well, but I eventually chose to do an MCA. But because I was very good at standardized testing, I got an opportunity to teach part time. And
Right.
Baroda is a place where if you get someone who can speak in English for like 2 hours, uh, it's like the at least back then the average of what a verbal faculty could do was fairly limited. So I think I was able to kind of get into that, and I think in a short period there was some amount of name that I was able to create as a verbal faculty, and all of this part time, right?
Right. Right.
When I came to Bangalore, that was my litmus test because I came for my day job, right? But then it's easy teaching in a smaller city. Could I teach in a larger city like Bangalore, right? When well, the answer is yes, I could, and I again pursued this part time alongside my full time job. Somewhere in 2006, it just got a little too much because Monday to Friday you're doing. That's when I got into project management. My job became a little bit more hectic, and this part of teaching, right? Like my weekends would go in teaching, and you can explain about passion only so much to friends, correct? Because
Right.
they are making plans and you're saying, no, I have a class, right? It's So I
Correct.
did that for quite a few years. In fact, from 2006 till 2011, I continued, my day job along with my part-time teaching. And
Right.
then finally, 2011 is when I took the plunge and I became an entrepreneur. And that's where I've been for the last decade plus.
Got it, Arun. Great. Before we talk about your transition, one interesting thing I want to probe you on, whatever you think it is, right? You use the word Gujarati mentality or Gujarat mentality. And you said how it's a little different from how entrepreneurship happens in Bangalore. Can you? What is it? What is different? What is the Gujarat mentality actually? I've heard about them a lot, but I'd like to. You've grown up in Vadodara and all, so would like to hear it from.
Right. So I think this is something which, I think if you look at it, and I don't want to stereotype, correct? So I don't know if it's politically incorrect, but if you look at it, I think there is a certain mentality that you have. In some places it's just inherent, maybe it's cultural, correct? And what I felt is the Jugaad mentality in Gujarat is to look for opportunities, right? So I'll give maybe one example so you can think of how it would work. So again, when I was growing up, there used to be this underpass, underbridge, and invariably during monsoons, it would get filled with water, right?
Right,
Now, if you are going in a car, you will see if there are any cars stuck,
right,
right? You will see there are no cars. So you will say, well, maybe it's easy for me to get through. You get in, you get stuck. Exactly at that point, there will be a guy who will come knock at the door, the window, and say, I can push it out like $100, right? Now you're obviously stuck. You say, okay, let me just get it out. You get it out. There is a mechanic waiting, and he knows
Wow.
your car needs to be restarted. Right? He's
Right.
starting to 200 bucks. Now the point is, these guys probably have a shop somewhere else.
Right.
But they
Right.
saw the opportunity. Hey, it's going to rain, right? Maybe this is going to happen. There's a problem. So I think that level of opportunity seizing is what I think is really the entrepreneurial mindset, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's a little bit more cultural in Gujarat. Education, on the other hand, is not as well regarded, right? So you don't really kind of have a lot of people who end up studying so much, but they end up making money.
Got it. Thank you. That was a
Yeah,
very new example that I've heard of. But yeah, I got the point. You know, you kind of go out of your comfort zone and go where the business is going to happen is probably what it is. So, Arun, you said, you're from a Tambram family and, entrepreneurship was not really in the scheme of things in your family. But you did get into the IT domain and you said, you started working part time from 2006 to 2011. Now, what was the need for you to do that? Was it just boredom in your existing job, or was it extra money, or were you looking at figuring something out so that you could quit the job?
right. So I think just a correction, it was actually 2001, 2000 to 2011.
Wow. Okay.
2006 is when I started Crack Verbal full time. Sorry, part time.
Part time. Got
So
it. Got
the
it. Got it.
entity Crack Verbal came into existence in 2006, and then 2011 I did that full time. So I'll just maybe give a kind of
So
a
my question would be, why did you? What was the reason for you to start part time teaching from 2001 itself?
right. So I think there were two reasons, right? I think the first reason, and it's very easy to look at it at this point and this, but uh, I was, I think all teachers somewhere they are kind of narcissists in some sense, right? Like little narcissistic quality. So how I got interested in teaching was even when I was in college.
Right.
In Viva, I would my roll number was one. Some odd sorting of algorithm, it would come up as because I don't have a surname, so it would sort it. I would be roll number one. I have to go and answer the questions, and then I would have my friends waiting outside. So I think the ability to explain was there, correct? So I think it was like a soft influence I had. People knew that I could help them.
Right.
In fact, at some point I would even be paid to take a test so that I could help them cheat on it. I know it sounds terrible, but I was so good at it, right? Like they know that I could just crack any entrance at a local level. So all of this was playing, and then I got into teaching software, right? I taught software because I thought that's the most easy thing because I have an education in that. But then I realized that I'm terrible at it. So why would I take my part time job to do something the same domain? And that is where there was an opportunity in a test prep company in Baroda. They were looking for a verbal faculty, and I didn't even have a resume for a faculty, right? So I made up this resume with my test course and all of it. So I was asked for a demo, and I kind of got in, and that's really how I got into test prep part time. The two reasons: one, it paid me money, right? And to be honest, at this point, I think somewhere 2005, 2006, the diminishing returns started kicking in, correct? But before that, the way I would look at it is it was like, to quote in Bangalore terms, beer money, correct? It's going to buy some extra thing. The second is I got a lot of kick out of it, right? I would love teaching, and if there is a concept I've taken in one class, I've taught in a particular way, there's an urge. Next class, what will I say differently? How do I get them to have that aha effect?
Right.
Those
Right. Right.
things always attracted me. So I think that's how it kind of ended continuing. But 10 years is a long time, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. 10, 11 years to do part time is a long time. And in 2001, when you started part time, you were working as a developer there, right?
correct. I was.
Okay, got it. So, Arun, now let's talk about your, transition. Part time is okay. Your family is probably thinking, he's working, he's doing this. When you wanted to completely take up entrepreneurship, quitting your full time job, what was the scenario like at home?
Right.
Was there any resistance? Were there any, anxiousness about all this? or were you prepared? Did you always know that I'm saving up so that I can go full time? How was it?
Right. So I think, like a lot of people have asked, right? Like if you knew in 2006 what you wanted to do, why didn't you go in, and why did you wait for so long? But I think if you go back, 10, 20 years ago, it was a very different mindset.
Right.
Startup wasn't as sexy as it was. I think now it's kind of gone back to not being sexy, but
Yes,
I
yes.
think but at least there is a greater acceptance, right, of someone wanting to do this. So I think a couple of things. So the first thing is that in this journey, of course, I also had a co-founder who was my wife, right, Shrikla, and she essentially was kind of doing this part time as well. So we were kind of doing it together, and at somewhere around 2010 is when she got into this full time, right?
Right.
And she kind of created this base for me. And the deal earlier was that I would kind of get in and she would kind of go back to working corporate. So she was in HP. So uh, but then, once things started rolling in 2010, I think by the time 2011 came, the decision was a lot easier for me to make because we at least were able to see that together. And the other thing also is that, now we realize that if she were to go back to working, right, I would need someone else to do that thing. So I couldn't have found, anyone to do the kind of way she was able to do this. So we then kind of so that's one thing that did make. Now coming to the other thing, which is the most important, right? Which is in terms of finances. I think I kind of created an Excel, did some math around it. But while I was doing this math, I spoke to one of my friends from the Marwadi community, and Marwadis have this very nice way of putting things, and they have been generationally in business, right? So it's not just one guy; he's learning from his father, grandfather, everyone else also. So he said, the moment you go with a plan B, correct? Any business you go, okay, you think you have a plan B, plan C, but when you go in, you don't have a plan B. If
Right.
something happens, then think of a plan B. Right now, just go and you have to think it will succeed, right?
Right.
Because one thing that usually happens is that there is a clock ticking which says, okay, this was my salary. So I
Right.
am losing this much money, right? 6 months, 8 months, and into it, it can kind of get to you. I said, look, there is no turning back. Let me just go. As long as I'm enjoying and as
Right.
long as I'm able to, meet my basic needs, right? Which, by the way, included a baby, right? It included, some potential education and
Yeah.
also a home loan EMI. I think these
Right.
are things that most people have, right? Like as liabilities that they
Yes.
want to
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Though I wouldn't want to call my kid a liability, but the education is, right?
Yes. Got
Her
it.
name
Got
is
it. Arun.
Sana, by the way. And my
Sahana.
yeah, and
Right.
my wife and co-founder is her name is Shrikala.
Great. Arun, so I'm going to go back a little bit more because there's another transition here. Because you started off working, although you did part time for 10 years, you must have had a transition where you worked for another company part time, versus you would have eventually moved on to having private students of your own.
Right.
So, how did that transition happen?
So what happened is I actually stopped teaching cold turkey. So I just kind of stopped. But I was very active on online forums. So
Okay.
back then, one of the largest online MBA forums in India was called Pagal Guy. And in
Right.
Pagal
Right.
Guy, I was a
Yes.
fairly active poster. And, like there was a brand equity I was able to build. Plus, my last teaching was I had started teaching GMAT then, and I was teaching at a place called Kaplan.
Yeah.
And they had a franchisee, and I was teaching there. So when I quit, many of those students actually came to me for advice and saying that,
Hmm.
probably you can help. And somewhere the word kind of spread, and on Pagal Guy, I started testing the waters. So what I did is now we can call it MVP, but in reality, when it happened, it was I had no idea what an MVP is, correct?
Right. Right.
Lean and all that have not even started. So all I did is I said, I started a thread called I will teach you how to crack verbal. So because I was a verbal faculty. So
Right.
that's how the name Crack Verbal actually came. So we used to meet at Airlines Hotel.
Right, right.
Thara coffee, and it's just on open air. The waiters don't come to bother you, right? So we could sit for hours, but I did that for free, correct?
Right.
Very quickly, what I started realizing is that, hey, if you give advice for free, people don't value it, right? I mean,
Correct,
uh,
correct. Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I ask people to come and then people don't show up. And that used to hit me. Like, I'm giving you free advice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
free teaching, but then, so then I said, let me, I picked a hotel where they have a conference room, and we had to kind of book minimum like 12 or 15 people. And there is this per
Head.
person they give,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Code. So it was, back in the day, it was working out to about 15,000. And I said, I'll create a 3,000 rupee course, which I will sell to six students. So I'll make 18,000, and 15,000 is the cost which I have to give. My time I'm not accounting, but at least I know that there is something that works. So I got six students, right? So I just kind of made it to six students. And, from there, the ball started rolling. So then, ever since then, right, the whole thing has been, how do I go about, doing this better? How do I go about, helping those students? So Crack Wobble has kind of grown since 2023 now. So you can imagine, right, in terms of how much it's evolved.
Which year was this,
This
Arun?
I did so I quit Kaplan in 2005. 2006 summer is when I started doing this. 2006 October is when we had our first workshop.
Got it. Arun. And you used to do this only on the weekends for 5 years.
Correct. So I would do that only on weekends because weekdays wouldn't allow me to teach. Saturday, Sunday boot camp.
Got it. You used to finish that thing in 2 days, is it? Students used to pay 3,000 rupees for 2 days.
Correct. So the initial thing was I was doing it over 2 weekends. So it was basically 4 days. That's the costing. But eventually we made that into 4 weekends. So it would be a 1 month boot camp or 4 weekends. Then
Right.
from 3K, we upped it to 6K. Then we got it to like, 8, 9K. Then we hit 10, 12K, right? So we kind of kept increasing. Eventually, we had a proper 3 month offline. We had three centers pre pandemic in Bangalore. In fact, we had expanded to even other cities, but we had finally consolidated. So we were running that as a larger operation. So,
Got it,
and
Arun.
then that costing was about the program would be about 35,000.
Got it. The verbal part alone for GMAT.
No, this we basically would cater to both. So 3K was verbal only, but then as we keep getting to the next level of pricing, we have to add. So we added quant also,
Right.
right? So then we kind of kept. We have to give material, so they have to get books now. So we had to publish books. So each time we would add something, we would end up increasing the course cost.
Got it. So you said that you were in this online forum where you kind of had a thread going where you would help people crack bubble. So that was your major source of students, even when you became paid. Is that correct, or did you do any paid ads and stuff like that back into 2006?
So to be honest, we did a bunch of crazy things, right? I mean, now if I look at it, it just looks like, wow, what was I thinking? So a couple of things. One of them is some kind of a guerrilla marketing, correct? Like we
Right.
would. So there was this MBA tour that was held in Bangalore, and I remember I had gotten people to kind of stand outside with a banner of Crack Verbal,
Oh,
correct?
right, right,
Then the hotel guy said, "No, you like I'm standing in the street, right? Like you can't really." But we had footfalls, right? People going and coming. So we
right,
did things like that. We also, and this is again, this is a pre-digital era, correct?
right.
So in a pre-digital era, I think Pagal guy was a huge lead source because that was one thing. But we also found that we were associated with some more things. Like for example, there was this Just Dial, correct? I think Just
Just
Dial was
style. Yeah.
also, right. So they would give you the phone number, and once a
Right.
person. Also, what I would do is I would get the phone numbers from Just Dial. Then when I'm actually driving back home, I would kind of call the students. So that was my routine.
Wow. Okay. So you did the sales yourself.
Yes, yes.
Got it. So when was the first hire that you made?
So we eventually, 2010 also, as I said, Shrikla and I were doing it ourselves. 2011 is when we had our first person come in. So we had some interns in between, but our first major hire was 2011, I think somewhere around early that year, correct?
Right.
And we had a person come in for sales. The same year, we had someone join us in an operations role. And just to give you a context, the salesperson left us, or rather, we kind of parted ways in 2018-19. So
Oh,
he
wow.
was
That's a
with
long
us.
stint. Yeah.
And the operations person is now taking care of sales. His name is Rikesh. He's there with us even today. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's awesome. Arun, one is when you were working from 2006 to 2011, doing weekends is one thing. Going full time, how did it change? How did it pan out? What were the changes that you had to implement? Or did you still continue weekends and you chill during the weekdays?
So this is one thing that people would ask me, right? Like, so you're teaching on weekends. What do you do on weekdays? Somehow, when we started out, we always wanted to build a company.
Right.
We always realized that yes, Arun is the maybe the product right now, but eventually we wanted to. So I think we had those principles in mind. So we said we will kind of this, but a lot of it was also that we have to do the kind of heavy lifting, correct? So,
Right.
in my case, for example, I was the teacher, I was doing sales, right? I had to do a bunch of things. So, one of the things that does come to you is your sense of identity, correct? Because, before I quit, I was in a nice kind of corner office, like a cubicle, that's like a with the AC office, and there are like other people in the team sitting with you. And suddenly from there, I went to this place. Our first office was on St. Mark's Road, and it was like this, kind of old building and small office, and there is a small fan that is going on. And remember, one day afternoon, I'm sitting, it was making this odd sound, right? And I'm like sitting there, what am I doing, right? Because somewhere your identity of what impact you're producing, correct, is like, what do I then call myself, right? Well,
Right.
for a long time, I used to call myself an English teacher before I started calling myself an entrepreneur, because it's really that's how I viewed it. And there is this certain societal thing that comes, right? Like, what do you do? The answer to
Correct.
that is a very easy, designation and company, but it takes some used to. I think, but that gets. I think I got used to it pretty fast, but
Got it. So you said, your co-founder, your wife, Shrikala, also, is a major part, played a major part. So did you, how did you happen to, rope her into this? Like, did she also have a natural inclination towards teaching the way you did? Or was it more of a functional thing?
So I think one thing that really happened is she wasn't anywhere close to. So this was
Teaching.
my stuff, right?
Right.
This is what I would do, right? But then it so happened that we had our daughter in 2008. So 2009, she was on maternity leave, and then the thing happened that I was trying to figure out what to do with crack verbal, and she had this decision at that point of saying, "Do I want to go back and continue with what I was doing?" Right? Because I think sometimes break gives you that perspective. So I
Yeah.
think that perspective. So she said, "Okay, why not? I help you." As I said initially, the thing is that gives me the flexibility of being at home, doing this stuff, right? At the same time, kind of uh, helping out. But as things would turn out, she ended up, liking it, loving it. So she takes care of admissions. She takes care of our entire applications team. So she works as a career mentor, career coach at Crackfable today. So she's been on a journey that she's kind of also enjoyed, right? So
Got it, Arun. Arun, I have more questions about this, but a little detour here. It's a little personal question. You
yeah,
can take it if you want to, or we can move
yeah.
past this. You said from 2001, you are also working, and all the weekends you're doing your part-time teaching. I am asking this in a sort of a comparative mode. Today's generation, or millennials, as you call it, or Gen Z, um, when it is marriage or when it is a relationship, spending time with each other is considered very important thing. How much time you're able to set, give for each other is one important thing. So when you are in marriage, how did you manage to work like 7 days a week? Or when you say weekends, you mean to say just 2 hours a week or something? What is the thing? Or didn't you have the need for giving each other some time? What was it like?
Right. You know what? I'm going to take it as a two-part question.
Okay, sure.
So, and I'm going to answer the first part, which is, the one that you asked about, till the time Crack Verbal started, correct?
Right,
This whole journey was my passion, correct?
right,
And the idea is that, when you look at supporting, right? So I think I got a lot of support. So there is no denying the fact that during those, weekends, 7 hours, 7 days a week is brutal. And it hits you on Monday morning because
yeah,
all your colleagues are refreshed after a weekend, but you have had something to do, and it's kind of hard. But I think I got a lot of support, so there is no denying that. And I think one of the things about me is this, right? I mean, this is my personality. I always like to be engaged. I kind of constantly am doing something, thinking something. So that's been part of my personality trait. So I think she kind of knew that from before, right?
okay,
Uh, but the second part, right, is the other question, which I thought might be what you were saying when you said personal, which is should you even start it with a spouse, right? Um, it's a very subjective answer. Definitely, it's worked out well in my case where things cannot work, but it is very tough because you know um, when we are together, it's just that we always joke that we actually have two children. Like one is our daughter, and then there is crack Crackford because both happened around the same time, and it's been a journey, right?
right,
So
right,
I think it's something that we'll have to learn how to balance, right?
right,
So
right.
there are calls when we have to make calls like management decisions, right? We are putting on our game face, right? But then we are back, we are family, so it's a different thing. So I think that takes some getting used to.
Got it, got it. And maybe also, given that both of you were entrepreneurial in the same business, both of you were working in the same business, probably you didn't have to set out a dedicated time for each other as such, because you're anyways together, and then whenever you'd have time, whatever it is. Got it.
Again,
So
talk about work. So it's very hard to let go of it, right? Because both of you are in that startup mode. You are thinking
right,
of all the plans and everything going so that. And but what happens even now, right? So those are very enjoyable conversations, correct?
right,
Where we are
right,
not thinking about work and we have so much context to what we are speaking. So I
right.
think that definitely helps.
Got it. So solving a problem together was the fun part in a way.
Right.
Got it. At the end of the day, it's for couples to do some activities together. In
Right.
your case, it was your business that you did together,
Correct.
which can be considered as an activity.
Right.
Got it,
And
Arun.
also 2017 when I started Perspicacity, I started that with Mahesh, who also happens to be my friend from college. Right. So yeah.
Great. I'm going to come to English for India and Vizerly as well. But before that, I've got a few more questions here. You said, you when you started Crack Verbal, you wanted it to be a company, but then you were aware of the fact that Arun is a product at that point in time. Because I've spoken to a lot of standardized test prep people, business professionals, who teach. The brand builds mainly because of one person,
Right.
because of the way they teach. They kind of become a celebrity sort of thing to those students, and then the students reference stuff like that. How did you go from, first of all, this is a two-part question. When you say Arun was a product, what made that product? What was the USP of that product? And second is, how did you manage to kind of make it a company beyond Arun himself? Because eventually, even as an individual, right, somebody is an entrepreneur to scale up and stuff like that. You don't want to just be one sort of a thing. So how did you tackle both of these things? Or what was the first, what made you a product? What's the USP? And second one, how did you move away from Arun being the main focus to changing into a company?
Right. So I think first off, as a teacher, I think there are two things that I do very well. I am a master of imitation and repetition. So I can
Okay.
see something, I know like how to do it in my brain. I'll kind of this, and I'll come and I'll be able to repeat it. I can repeat it like so. I each class for me was an exercise in optimization, right? Because it's boring if I'm going to see each class as a class which is going to be the same thing. So for me, it is almost like theater. Like when you're performing for a drama or a play, every time you go, it's a performance in front of an audience. You're not saying, I'm going and doing the same thing. No.
Right.
And what I noticed about teaching is teaching as a profession doesn't pay very well, which is also one of the reasons I actually stopped teaching because per hour, there is only so much, right? It gets capped. So what happens is the good guys don't stay for long, right?
Right.
And the guys
Right.
who stay for long, unfortunately, in most cases, are not people who can do anything else, right? So
Yeah.
that's why they say, those who can do, those who can't teach, right? So, I mean, I'm a teacher. I'm kind of, I represent the teaching community, but that's really the case. What I saw. So for me, what happened is I not only had the intelligence to figure out right how to optimize and how to do this, but I also had experience because now I was teaching part time for a decade. So when I
Right.
launched Crack Verbal, like I started teaching, I wasn't coming in and saying, well, this is my first time, right? I had done enough of this.
Right.
Now, what happened, of course, is that stuck because if you sit in, and I'm not saying this out of any arrogance or this, but if you were to go back to that point in period and you were to sit in my class for 3 hours, you sit in any other class, who am I competing with? I'm competing with a guy who's probably paid 250 rupees an hour, correct? I'm not trying to sound demeaning, but it's you're just going to get
Fair enough.
quality
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is
Yes.
right. And also what happens, the curriculum is also dumbed down. So what I also realized is students are very smart, right? So what we started doing, instead of just teaching, we would teach other things, right? About business, about life, about entrepreneurship, about this, that, and some amount of stand-up comedy thrown in. And overall,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, so overall, I was soon taking multiple batches, right? And this thing came across. I realized that I can't clone myself, which is what every other teacher wants. They want this one teacher who is going to be their, reflection. So I think couple of things I did was I did not put myself on a pedestal, but I said if someone is teaching 80% of me, that is good enough,
Right.
right? So it is not that I want everyone to be like me and clone that. And I found a niche of a particular type of people who would be my ideal trainers. Once I identified that group, I just had to build that community, right? So these were people who had already taken that GMAT, who had already done their MBA. Typically, they would be from ISB, right? And they would be working in corporates. But somewhere deep down, they have a teacher in them,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I just had to attract those people. So for them, they had taken the GMAT, they had very high scores, so they knew the test. Because they were working in corporates like Amazon and stuff, their communication and all that happened. Third, from a student perspective, there was an aspirational thing because they want to take the GMAT and get to ISB. And there's a guy who's teaching them GMAT, correct? So I think those kind of things work for me. So over a period of time, the idea was to have people come and say, I want to attend. The first day I heard this, that I want to attend, we had a faculty called Shrikant Singh, right? So it's a Shrikant's class, right? That the time I know it is like no longer Arun, but there are other faculty who can
Right.
carry the brand.
Wow. That story ended very beautifully. Didn't see that coming at all, because that's one of the most biggest problems teachers who started 5 years before, 10 years before are facing today. From what I've spoken, they want to scale up, but they don't know who's gonna replace them, because they want to stop teaching. They want to relax a little bit. They don't want to put in that many number of hours they put in all these years. So great stuff.
So I'll just add one more point over here, which is so even today, if you look at it, though we don't only have IS like this, mentors, we also have a very strong team internally. I
Right,
think also as an entrepreneur, as the founder, I think empowering the team, right? And when we go, for example, when I have my YouTube videos, I go in the YouTube videos, but when a team contacts Crack Verbal, I want them to know that you are talking to my team. These are
right,
people who I talk to on a daily basis, right?
right.
And I also have ways by which they can reach out to me. For example, I actually have a call before the student takes the GMAT, right? So I do that call personally for the students, because for me, that's a way for me to also be connected with the
Yep,
student community. Otherwise, I may end up, kind of getting this. So I also get that feedback about how the course was and also give them that help. So I think we have to look at how do we eventually what students want is our expertise, right? So
right,
what
right.
is the best way to give it to them is, I think, the question therefore.
Got it, Arun. Arun, I'd like to touch a little bit upon the team building activity, or hiring, or building your crack verbal company. When you first hired in 2011, your salesperson, who you had for a long time. The reason I'm asking you where I'm coming from is that when you and your spouse run a business, it's pretty much you don't have any trust issues. Both of you are interchangeable, both of you have same interests in mind. Okay, you know that you don't have any control issues, you don't feel you're out of control. But the moment you have to bring in a third person, a stranger, into the company that you've built for so many years with so much of hard work, uh, was it a very easy process for you, or how did you handle that? And did you learn on the go, or did your previous experiences as a project manager help you?
Yeah, I think definitely both of our experience in IT was very useful, right? So this is again those connecting the dots kind of thing, because IT is run in such a professional way. That is how we ran Crack Global from day one
Right,
in terms of this. So we had functions that we had. So we had someone for marketing. We had identified someone. The only thing we wanted to do is, instead of putting in money out of our pockets, we wanted the business to get us the budget to go and hire. So therefore, we would keep these hiring goals saying, if we are able to get to X number of students, which results in Y, we will hire, let's say, someone to do this job. So I think that was how we looked at hiring, and we did not think of anyone. In fact, even before we got someone full time, we also worked with people part time, right? So we had someone who was helping us build our first website, correct?
right.
Uh, we had our first quant faculty, right, who was working full time, but he would come and teach quant part time, right? So those kind of, we saw the value what other people can bring. So I think for us to transition that to a full time role, and there was no equity split, we didn't get very senior hires, so that also made life a little easier.
Got it. Now, coming to 2020, the lockdown happens, the pandemic and all that. But before I get there, were you doing only in class sessions, that is face to face classes, until then, or did you start your online sessions any earlier than the pandemic itself?
So we actually started online way back in 2013, where we would have our remote
Wow.
centers in Bombay, Delhi, and Chennai, 2014. And I would be relayed live to all these cities out of Bangalore. So we had some kind of an online component then. Uh, but then, we did have online. But I think if you look at it from a mentality perspective, see, if you're an offline player, at least back then, if I were to look at my own efforts on online, online was something I also did. Oh, you are not from the places where I can serve you. Why don't you take our online? Correct. So I think 2016 is when we started actively selling online. Till then, I think we're just more of a add-on product. But eventually, from 2016 to 20, again, we had a pre-recorded course, and we were still focused mainly, offline. But because we had those experiments, because we had that platform, because we had all of it, I think it helped us make the transition during the pandemic a lot faster. So we were
Got it,
dabbling.
Arun.
And once pandemic hit 2020, we had to go completely on.
Got it. And you're online even today. You don't have any
Yeah,
physical centers.
correct. And we are 100% remote as a company.
Great. Arun, from 20, you said, your pre-recorded courses and your online thing started from 2016 and you went online completely in 2020. From a tools point of view, from all the software point of view, how has the journey been from 2016 till today? What are the upgrades you've made? What are the evolution that have happened and stuff like that in terms of process, tools, software and stuff?
So honestly, when we got into this 2016, everything is in hindsight, right? It
Right.
looks really stupid, but we somehow got this freelance developer who convinced us that he would develop an LMS for us. Okay, and
This was in 2016.
this is 2016. He was based out of Pagwada. He could speak only Punjabi, and the person from our side liaising was, Tamil. So he would kind of have this very funny, exchange of what the LMS is going to, and he would say, "Acha, LMS, mein, what do you want?" Correct? We would go like crazy, say, "Do this, do that," and eventually, you can imagine what happened. We really never got the product, and eventually, he gave us the code and said, this is, I would say, even cloud wasn't as big, right? Back then it was.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that is where we started very quickly. We realized that that is not something that we wanted to kind of spend on. So then we got onto another online platform that help us host the videos, right? If I were to look at how technology has changed, I think definitely there has been a lot more capability that is built in. I think the user experience has also improved, correct? As with most other things, like if I were to go visit a website in 2016 to now, I think,
Yeah.
that more minimal design, more intuitive buttons, and so on. So I think the good and the bad part is really that, which is things have improved, but not really. I'm very excited how generative AI is going to be that paradigm shift, because that is where I see things kind of moving in a very interesting way. So
Got it, Arun. Arun, you said in 2016 you did pre-recorded courses where you recorded and you could have you sold it. But then way back in 2013, what you did was, for the lack of teachers or to maintain the quality, you just replicated the offline model itself,
correct,
because offline model technically is a model where students will have to come out of their houses and into a center. Whether
right,
the teacher comes to the center or he teaches from wherever it is, it's one thing.
right,
But in between this, did you ever teach students who sat at home and, via Zoom or Google Meet?
right.
Did that happen? What triggered that model? Were there incoming demands and were there, requests for private one-on-one tutoring and all that?
Right. So I think what happened is initially for us online meant on demand, because what we were doing in a classroom is very hard for me to package it in a online kind of
Right.
mode, right? So somehow we ended up doing some live sessions, but we weren't very happy because it did not have the same feel. And see, for us also, our faculty also did not want to do it. They got a kick doing it in front of it. This is an online. I don't see people. There is a chat window. I have to go ask questions. And internet speeds were also a problem,
Yeah,
right? This
yeah.
is pre-Geo, 4G, and so half the time, I'm not able to hear, and kind of get those kind of things. So we did a smattering of these live, classes over a period of time, but it wasn't serious till pandemic hit, and 2020 March. I took the last class in all my centers, and I informed them that there is this, Chinese virus. So we want to be careful. I remember I went in front of them without a mask, right? I mean, right?
Right.
It had not set in. So I said, next class I will teach, because by then I'd stopped teaching. There were other people teaching. So I said, I will teach you and I'll teach you live. So all the batches got merged and I started teaching live online. So that is a program that we are continuing till now. So we
Okay,
have an on-demand program, but we also have a live program, and we also have personal one-on-one tutoring.
right.
These are the three products that we currently have. And in
Sorry,
2020,
sorry, Arun. Sorry for interfering. You said three products. One is the on-demand program that you started during the pandemic. One is one-on-one personal. One more is
it's a live group cohort. It's a cohort-based learning.
okay, right. Where you still have the trainers who you hired do those things.
Yeah, who do the weekend teaching and stuff live online.
Got it.
And we are planning to do the classroom in a workshop model, which is going back to 2006, where it all began. So we want to go with the asset light model. I don't want to, now that I've shut down my centers, I go back, I do the math, it just doesn't make sense. For a single product like GMAT, MBA kind of product, it doesn't make sense. So that's where we thought we'll kind of go with the workshop model.
Okay, sorry, I lost you for a second. Yeah, I heard you last. You said for a single product, it doesn't make sense. Arun, another thing that I want to touch upon is you stressed upon the fact, how for you it was like a performance, right? In front of the audience, it's not like you're a teacher and stuff like that. Every time you go, it's like a play. Now, uh, cut to online teaching where you do not have live people in front of you. How did you adapt to that? Did you have to do anything special for that, or was it just another easy, natural transition for you?
2020, when it started till 2023, we are still in the learning process, right? It's been so. First thing, what I did instinctively, I took my teaching style, I took everything I had from the offline to an online, assuming that people interact the way they interact offline,
Right.
right? I realized that in my first class itself, when I cracked a joke and I had to stare at my chat window to see if people are even reacting. Correct? So I think that was, when I realized that a lot of things had to change, but I think we just went in with that adaptation. So for the first 1 year, we did that. And then I think after about a year and pretty much the last 2 years, we have kind of started looking at it more in terms of a student journey, right? So what happened online is we replicated an offline model. In offline, I give you a course; it's a 3 month course. You have to come to the center. I'm not going to go to your house, right? So the onus is on you, right? But when we went online, what we realized is that just expecting them to show up is not a good way for us to deliver our program, right? So we started looking at what is it that is important for us. So we identified some key metrics. One of the key metric was course completion. So we said, so eventually people have to take the test, but are you able to complete the course? Do you have the confidence to at least take a practice test and then see, how we want to take it? So we kept that as a goal, and we started looking at it more in terms of the student experience. So we kind of split the student journey. So in that space, attending the class is one part of the overall experience, right? Rather than saying that is the product that you come in, I'll teach and then we go back, right? So
Got it. Arun. Arun, in 2020, when the pandemic started, you said you started off this online thing, and then you realized how you cannot just replicate the offline model and stuff. You must have probably used a tool like Zoom or something. But
correct.
when you changed the perspective, the way you looked at online teaching from a student journey point of view, you said the delivery of your classes just became one aspect of it, and there is so many other things that had to come. So to meet all these things, what does your tech stack look like? What are the tools that you use?
Right. So what also happened is there is a slight, detour, which is 2020 when we went from offline to online, we were able to take a lot of our brand equity from the offline world to the online world, right?
Right.
So I think that was a good year, and everyone else around was talking EdTech. So I think it's very easy to get into that. So we decided to develop a product, and we created a product which essentially is helping us with our on-demand and live program. Uh, the product vision that I had I think we are kind of, we think the vision is good of what we need to do, but in hindsight, and I'm just sharing my very honest opinion here, is tech is not a game that you can play without VC funding, right? That's
Right.
something that we realized that. So we thought we will develop this as an MVP, then kind of go raise funds, right? But then when funding didn't come, we don't want to really plow back a lot of money from the business into creating
Yeah.
the test for the sake of tech, right? So we believe we have got a good platform to help students, but could I have done it with a third party? Maybe, correct?
Right.
But of course, I do have some more control in the way I do the platform, right? So that is the first thing. So the platform gives us data around student performance, like how they have what they have watched, and uh, so on and so. For a student, also they can attend the weekend class and all that from the platform itself. Apart from that, we have a way by which we split the students into three broad buckets. So
Okay.
the first bucket is when a student comes in, the orientation. So many times what happens is people purchase a course, but they don't get started with the course. And this we realized was a big dropout point for us. Like when we asked, they said, "Yeah, I thought of GMAT, I purchased, but I'm not like getting started, right?" And uh, it's not something that I would like to have with my students, that they pay for something and not take the service. So first goal is for them to get oriented, where we make sure that they come in and get an understanding of how the GMAT is and how the course is going to help them. Start watching the basics. Then we have a period called improvement. You did not know something, I'll teach you something, your course will improve.
Right.
This is really where the course ends. But then we have one more phase called the optimization phase. So now you know what it is, but somewhere you are not able to get to a higher score. So then we have slightly more high touch kind of involvement with these set of students, because for us, the more students who take the GMAT, I mean, very obviously it's better for us, correct? As a company, that's a learning outcome that we want to look at. We also would like to help them in their MBA admission journey, correct?
Right.
And the best kind of referrals that we get are from our students, right? So
Right.
so multiple reasons why we believe that's important. So we kind of create these three stages, which is not in our product, in the sense the maintenance that we use on Google Docs, we use spreadsheets, and kind of do it that way.
Got it. Arun, you spoke about your attempt at getting a VC funding for a product that you created, but it didn't kind of, um, succeed. What was your experience like? What was your learning?
Right. So I think a couple of things that happened. One is 2019, I was enrolled for a Stanford program. It's run for entrepreneurs called the Stanford Transformation Program. And it's meant for growth stage companies and companies that they believe have the potential. So I think my journey of this VC started somewhere in 2019. Till then, I was fairly traditional in my mindset, but 2019 is when I started thinking. I started thinking about things like scale and so on. 2020, when pandemic hit, and see this like what I realized about Stanford is it's a mindset, it's a thinking. What you
Right.
get at Stanford, it's like a West Coast VC mindset, right? Where everything is metrics, everything is growth, everything is, very exciting. At least when I kind of started learning, it's like, wow, this sounds very exciting. And when pandemic hit, it looked like, acha, I have to execute the plan, right? But I think deep down, I was missing my why, right? And I remember one of my friends, he just asked, right, like, why are you doing this, correct? Because you're doing what you like, you're, kind of doing something, why do you want to get into? I did not have a very great answer to defend. So I think I took the idea, and because of the network that I had created, I knew that even before I go to a VC, right, I want to make sure that my friend circle, people in my network should say, Arun, great idea, get VC money for this, right? But if they are going to say, well, things that, I am not able to answer, I think a lot of them, by the way, knowing me, I think the bigger question is, do you really want to do this? Correct? Is that the
Right.
journey you want to pick? And I think that made me go a little deeper. So 2021 is when we created the product and this whole EdTech hype happened. Fortunately, my CAC also went up for the uninitiated customer acquisition cost, performance marketing, right? So product cost and all of that scaled up. But fortunately, we were able to kind of, put kind of get our things back. So we were able to kind of survive. So now we are on the way to making, we have recovered. So now is kind of the onward growth journey.
Got it, Arun. Um, and you also said EdTech is a game that cannot be played without VC funds, right? Why is that?
Right. So, see, there are two types of edtech things. So, I definitely want to appreciate the fact that there is possibility of someone doing it. Correct. But typically, what you will see is you will see two types of companies. Right. One would be a traditional company that wants to go online. Correct. Like for example, Allen today has launched a digital version, but I'm not very sure if they are going to replace the rigor that they get from a classroom, kind of retail model, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, if I were to look at, let's say, a Byju's or an Unacademy, right? Do they really have the operational skills to go and set up, centers and run it? I don't know, right? So I think if someone is in a traditional space where they already are the experts in that particular thing, I think bootstrapping, because you are already making money, right? And building out a tech product, at least, the initial bit, you should be able to do it, and, that may be suffice. But if you are saying no, I am going to re-engineer the whole process. I am going to build a new AI to kind of reinvent the wheel. Sure, but then that is a journey for which you need VC money, right? So I wasn't playing that game. I realized very quickly.
Right.
Uh, I really, honestly, I didn't have a good idea. Let me put it that way. Every
Right.
idea that I thought of, I always felt that there is something else I could do, and I think I was waiting for it. And then the funding winter happened. So all the ideas, even if I had a great idea, wouldn't have really kind of worked. So I think it was a good pass.
Got it. But where is the need for idea when you have a business that's running well? It's all about scaling up, no?
Right. So I think when I say idea, what I meant is in terms of, so if I can just tell you what we are looking at, it potentially, if that is a great idea, I could go and raise money for it, because I have done this for 12 years. If I see something happening, if I see that traction coming, I would definitely want to raise money. But I'll just give one example of, so students who come to us for GMAT MBA, right, are really not necessarily looking for GMAT MBA. So think about, why would a person think of quitting his job, okay, putting his life earnings, right, and not taking a pay, right, and possibly going to a foreign country. Why would someone want to take that risk? Because there is some dissatisfaction, displeasure with what they are doing, right, in their current careers. So in
Right.
the first level, when we talk, and we talk to thousands of students, right, our first level conversations are usually about their career progression, about, and we are able to serve a percentage of that market in GMAT and MBA. But there is a large percentage which requires career advice, right, and we are providing that free at this point. Correct. But I would really love to see if I can build a product, right, where I can, kind of monetize career services, right? So I want to look at something which has a larger TAM, right? So GMAT and MBA is too small a market for that money to be invested. But careers as a space is huge, right? So
Right.
maybe, for that sometime. But at this point, with what we are doing at Crack Verbal, we generate enough cash for me to at least do those experiments.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right. Got it, Arun. Arun, now, going back a little bit when you spoke about, how your wife also kind of, took a break from her work. And then, when you both started working together, you said she now heads um, the opportunities for the students, what they can do, career counseling sort of a thing. So you started off as a trainer, or a test prep teacher, coach, whatever you want to call it. Now, how did you have the skill sets? What credibility did you have, or what knowledge did you have, and how did you kind of take up also the business of advising students on their career path as such? How did that come to happen?
Right. So I think that happened in an organic manner over a period of time. So we were into test prep, but our students were applying because we had built a relationship with them. They would come and ask us. We
Right,
had some students who had already gone in, to the US and were in top schools. We kind of used that network to conduct, let's say, mock interviews, right?
right.
And over a period of time, we started people telling us, right, why don't you start admissions? And that, according to me, is the greatest validation, right, for an idea. When your own customers come and say, why are you losing money to this guy when, I think you have the, kind of thing to do it. So that's how we started. I think the first few years, we kind of did it mostly internally. But eventually, we now have a panel of mentors from top B schools. So we have a fairly large 40 to 50 mentors from top schools. So what we do is we have the crack verbal process, but eventually he works with the mentor. And it's like you could say a quasi marketplace of sorts. So we give a percentage to the mentor and okay.
Got it. It was initially free, but then you started charging for the career counseling part of it.
Correct. Initially, it was free because we didn't have the confidence to really say whether what we
Right,
are
right,
doing
right.
is,
Of course.
when we saw that success, like I helped someone get into LBS, is when I know that okay, this essay is what it is, right? And then you get that feedback loop and kind of helps build your confidence to charge.
Got it, Arun. Arun, but what really encompasses that entire thing of career counseling?
So, when students come to us, what we do is we essentially help them answer three questions, right? So, the first is where do you want to go?
Right,
Correct. And in order to ask where do you want to go, I think we also end up asking the second question, which is where are you? What is it that you bring? Correct at this point. And then the third question becomes easier, which is what is the delta between where you want to go and where you are? Correct.
right,
And
right.
there are multiple paths to get there. We just need to pick the most efficient and effective way to get to our goals.
Got it, Arun. And when you said, you want to kind of look at uh, an audience with a larger opportunity, with a larger TAM, that means career counseling, you're not only looking at it from an MBA point of view, you're looking at it from any field, any domain point of view, right? It could be arts, it could be commerce, science, engineering, whatever it is. But in this career counseling that you spoke about, the first question you ask is you already ask them where you want to go. But so don't you help them with choosing where they want to go?
Correct. So when I said these are the three questions to which together we find the answer. And as you,
Right, right, right,
I think there are three answers that I usually get, correct? And each of these three answers, when we dig a little deeper, we realize there are issues. So, first is I'm absolutely clear what I want to do.
okay.
Usually, my question is why? And when we get into the why, we realize many a times it's just what they have heard. I want to get
Right,
into consulting. I want to get into McKinsey, Bain, BCG, right? And people kind of have this, thing without really asking whether it's really for them, right? So
right,
that's one. Second is, people who say, I do not have a goal. I want to go to a B school and explore what I want to do with life. Terrible. Okay. Because the amount of money you're spending on a B school, if you don't know what is your goal, right, it's a terrible investment. Correct.
right,
So, if nothing else, be open to the fact that you can change your mind when you get in, but at least till that point, you'll have to have fake it till you make it at least pick some goal, right, which is aligned to your strengths, but you
right,
can always change that goal going ahead. And the third is where people come in, and I think I'm seeing a lot more of people in the third category where they are saying, look, Arun, I don't know what the world is going to look like in 10 years.
right, right,
Correct?
right,
So I don't want to get into the silo of saying I want to be a product manager, I want to do this, I want to do that. If I were to pick an industry and a function, correct? How will my growth look like in the next, 3 to 5 years, correct? And therefore, what do I need to pick? Maybe an MBA is not an answer, correct? Maybe something
Right.
else.
Right.
So,
Great. Arun, and as far as crack verbal is concerned, I think everything is pretty much done. Just one aspect for me to touch upon. What does your sales and marketing look like? I'm asking this to you in a certain way because, see, when you start off a product yourself, no, I know that, or the norm is that you get most of your students through referrals. It's word of mouth. Is it still that way, or have you moved on where it's beyond word of mouth also now?
right. So, yeah, I think word of mouth, just to give you a sense, I think it works better in an offline mode. I just feel that in an online, sometimes, people just tend to consume it and they are not in that setting to, kind of this thing. So, having said that, I think we still get referrals, but classroom is different. Classroom is, if I were to give an analogy, it's like a restaurant business, right?
Yeah.
Think of Veena stores, right? Malaysia. Someone goes there, has at least back in the day when it was a hole in the wall kind of thing, there's an experience. Now, the moment it comes to Swiggy or Zomato, it's just like a five-star rating, correct? And
Correct.
everybody has
Correct.
like 4.7, 4.8 rating. It becomes very hard to really differentiate, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's one big, thing that we realized. So from a marketing perspective, just to give a sense of the sales and marketing engine. So we have marketing, which is broadly in kind of, you could say, two categories. One is performance marketing. We do some amount of performance marketing,
Yeah.
but we are also focusing on content marketing. So performance marketing, content marketing, and both of them are the top of the funnel. When they come to the website, we give a free version of the course. We kind of get them used to how the things are, and then it goes into our CRM. So from the website, so all our leads are digital. So that means there will be a landing page or the main website from where they will land into the CRM. And in the CRM, we have a lead score that we assign based on the activities they are doing. And then we have a set of counselors. They are in sales, but we like to call them customer success managers, right?
Right.
Because their job is to ensure that the people they are talking to, they also act as career counselors, right? To help them kind of this. And as part of it, they sell the GMAT and the MBA admissions product, right? So that's how my marketing and sales is set up.
Got it, Arun. Arun, just to give an idea to the people who are probably aspiring at having something of their own, who are verbal uh, teachers now for GMAT or Quant for that matter. A big dilemma for anybody who start off is whether to go organic or go performance marketing route. As far as when it comes to performance marketing, what is the return like if you're investing 100 rupees on performance marketing? What is it that you can realistically expect?
I think performance marketing also goes down the tech route, right? You can pump in as much money as you want and it keeps sucking in all that money, right? So for us, we did not start with performance marketing. So we had classroom run completely organic, correct? And if I were to think about it, except for Just Dial, I don't even know how I got leads, right? I had a website, but not many people were searching on it, correct? On
Right.
Google and stuff. So I think the first thing that we did was we dabbled with performance marketing for quite some time. We made a lot of mistakes. We learned a lot along the way. So that journey itself took a long time. So
Right.
someone who's not started performance marketing, my experience has told me that don't go in thinking that I will figure it out from day one.
Right.
And you will have a lot of people coming you, convincing you with these numbers that you give me 100 rupees in the ad, I'll give you like 500 leads. But what eventually happened with performance marketing, and still we have rationalized the cost, but eventually what happens is today it is easier than before or ever to show your ads and generate leads, correct?
Right.
But the quality of the conversation that we have with organic leads, with referral leads, with leads who have done their due diligence, as opposed to someone who just saw some ad and clicked and doesn't even remember, is chalk and cheese, right? So I think performance, that again, this is my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
but it has to be a longer drawn thing. So now we have enough performance marketing for us to give us the right ROI, but it has
Right.
taken us quite some time to get to this, and also finding the right partners. So we have some partners and people who kind of help us, but even that has taken us quite some time.
Got it, Arun. Arun, if we take your source of acquiring client as three buckets, correct me if I'm wrong. One is performance marketing, one is content marketing, one more is the referrals of the word of mouth. What would be the percentage split?
So typically, what happens is I'm going to put it as organic and direct. So organic and direct uh, is perhaps right now, I would say the split is uh, 40-40, and referrals maybe about 20, right? So
Right,
equal from performance. So performance, the thing is, it gives you more leads. Like it's easier for you. Some ads that you can run, what kind of keywords and those. So I think if you know that, then but I would say 40-40-20 is probably how it is, right?
got it, Arun. Thank you for
And
that.
we want to get that referrals from about 20 to a 30, which is my goal to get to that number.
Got it. Arun, crack verbal, I think we've spoken about, but you don't do only crack verbal, you also do English for India. And now, very recently, you've started something called as Vizerly. But can you talk to us about English for India? How did that come about in the middle of all this that's going on?
So I think by 2016, I had gotten all my processes in place, so to speak, for Crack Verbal. So it was kind of self-managed. I had like people, and that's when Mahesh Tharani, my friend
Right,
from Bab, so we used to quiz together. So we started having this discussion. We hit upon this idea that we had. So he also is from Baroda. So we are the only two people from Baroda who could speak English even back then.
right,
Like so we're like wondering like how did language give us an advantage in our careers, in our lives, and we realized that there is a larger problem that we would like to solve. So that's how we gotten into it. We did a bunch of experimentation. We were offline initially, then we went online, and then the pandemic, even at that place, we kind of moved online.
right,
Very quickly, we realized a couple of things. One is India wants to learn English but doesn't want to pay for it. So,
right,
it's very hard to monetize.
right.
And, you have these teachers who are individual teachers who can sell a course for maybe a 99, 199 kind of price point.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there is a market over there, but just that we weren't into that market. So, we pivoted to B2B. So, that's how our journey kind of shifted. But what happened? We continued with the English for India brand name, which later on, started becoming a little, it was it's kind of not going in with what we were doing for companies because they don't want to learn English; they want to improve communication. Correct.
right, right,
So we thought we'll change that. So we continue English for India as a B2B2C in the sense we work with colleges where we teach English according to the CFR framework from A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. And on Viserly, we have the business communication courses where we cater exclusively to corporates.
got it, Arun. I just want to like probe a little bit on the English for India because English. If somebody wants to start teaching and they don't have a specific skill set like verbal or quant to teach GMAT or something, English is something that anybody can fall back on as a skill that they can probably teach and make some money or make a living. So for somebody who's starting out, can you share some of the things that you spent time and learned and discovered for yourself?
So I think a couple of things that I would probably suggest. So the first is I think there is a certain merit in learning the pedagogy that is required for teaching adults.
Right.
So there is a certification of English language training to adults. So it's called
Celta you're talking about.
right.
Right, right,
So I think going through that rigor is important because the biggest shift is English is not A for apple and B for ball. Correct? When you're teaching to adults, especially in a country like India, where people still have a very rich active vocabulary. In the
right,
sense, I can tell at least 10 words that in English that every Indian would know, like time, correct? You say, what is the time, right? Time kya hai or whatever. So I think that is, it's very different. So that would be my first thing to kind of this, because I see a lot of people who are self-taught and
Right.
they say, oh, I know how to do it. I will be able to teach you. It's not the same, right?
Right.
To get into teaching, it has to be slightly more formal. So I think that's the first bit. So we spent a lot of time learning about this, whole thing on CFR, correct? The Common European Framework of Languages. I think German, Spanish, French, all these European languages also have that. So English also, we realized we had to create content for A1, A2. So there is some amount of theoretical knowledge that is required. The second thing that we realized is, when you look at communication, English communication, language learning, I think content is one part. I think
Okay.
when you look at delivery, you look at it in terms of content. But I
Right.
think there is content, there is context, and then there is confidence. Correct?
Right.
So I need to know what to say, I need to know when to say it, right? I also need to have that awareness and I need to know how to say it, it should come across in the way I'm intending it to. So, we kind of delved a little deeper and we realized that all communication, right, there is a productive aspect and there is a receptive aspect. So, the
Right.
productive aspect is writing and speaking,
Right.
and the receptive aspect is reading and listening, right? So
Right.
we realize that people tend to focus on the productive aspect. Like you'll have spoken English course, correct? Or
Right.
you'll be asked to improve written communication. But so we doubled down on that. We said, okay, within that, what do we want to put in written? So within written, we found a huge opportunity in email. And honestly, we had not thought of it, right? I mean, I come from a generation when, I was like, what is that, right? Know about email, right? But we very quickly realized that email is a huge need. So that came in written. And then similarly in spoken, we have various things, right? From giving them the confidence to also things like cultural, how do deal with people from other cultures, so on and so forth. So that's how we really got into the product building.
Got it, Arun. Arun, when somebody starts to probably teach something, let's take English, which is the most common thing that anybody can probably, most of the people can start if they want to. You from your experience, you would have started off thinking that, what, this is what probably the market needs. But after all these years, what do you think the Indian market actually need? Where there is scope to make money? What is that is really useful now? What is in demand right now?
I think if you look at communication, I think to a large extent, especially with generative AI, I think that's again, something that I'm very interested to see how it's going to disrupt the language learning model, because the language learning industry, because I
Right.
think the models lend itself very beautifully to this particular use case, correct?
Right.
Be it
Right.
in terms of text and uh, the idea is that eventually, the way I look at it is that your knowledge of English is not going to stop you in an online world,
Right.
right? In an offline world, if someone is going to come and talk to you, you obviously need to respond. So, you need to learn, correct? So, if you are in an offline world, important to kind of look at it as a different.
Right.
If you're online, I think today not knowing the language is no longer an excuse, right? Recently, I did a training and, I had all these tech guys, right? And I said, look, you've been having this chip on your shoulder that I'm technically very good, but someone with a better communication is able to, write better than me. With Chat GPT, there is nothing stopping them. In fact, I've seen that a lot of people in my team, right, more confident to write LinkedIn posts, right? So I think it's definitely helped people express themselves. So I think if you are in an online world, I think AI has a great it's a great opportunity, right? Offline, the challenges would still remain. Sorry, the
Fair.
question was around if you were to look at opportunity, right? So, yeah, so the opportunity I would say is if there is a way by which you can look at some use cases with generative AI to kind of teach in an online, that's what I would suggest. And in an offline, I think it's even greater now with all these Gen I things coming in, what really is, how do we get the human connection? So if it's customer support, I know there is automation, but still, when they end up talking to someone, you need to have that,
Yeah.
personality, that thing to yeah.
Got it, Arun. It's very interestingly put when you mentioned about when you just divided it into online and offline. You say online is easier because of tools like ChatGPT. I'm assuming, right? And you said that offline is probably nothing has really come now for you to aid you in your offline communications. But going back to ChatGPT also, even to interact with ChatGPT and get the best of ChatGPT, or ChatGPT is not always right. It can embarrass you very badly if you really don't know what you're doing with it. So how do you address that gap? So is that what you're saying? In offline, probably you can teach people how to use generative AI. Is that where you're saying there is opportunity?
So I think, let me kind of put it this way, that if you send me an email without me being very conversant in English, I can respond to that email and make you feel that I know enough to sound smart.
Right.
But offline, I can't do that. You talk to me, you will get to know my communication.
Correct. Correct. That's right.
So yeah, so I think that is the more fundamental thing of the difference between online and offline. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying, "Look, online these guys will figure it out.
Right.
Offline, I want them to develop the confidence and how to talk and those non-verbal cues." So I think that business is still huge. I think there is a huge opportunity there.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
if
Right.
someone is doing online teaching, I would say to look at Chat GPT and generative AI. Ideally, Chat GPT, what we are looking at is really just the introduction to that, correct?
Right.
But in the next, like Microsoft has already launched Copilot with the MS Office, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when that rolls out, nobody will now stare at a blank MS Word screen ever,
Right.
right? You
Right.
always will have the first draft written for you.
Right.
Outlook is going to give you like a sample, three samples to pick to respond, correct? So I think that is happening at the point of work. In
Right.
other words, if I would ask myself that, hey, Arun, your email training course, right? Tomorrow, if Microsoft and Google are going to roll it out and the cost comes down and companies start adopting it, I don't need to learn. I can just go and my tool will help me do that, right? So, which is why we are also looking at how do we use generative AI in our training.
Right.
So, and we are also trying to educate our customers, as you correctly said, creating the prompt, right? How do you think? I think there is also this very thing around people feeling that I'm slacking if I'm using ChatGPT, right? So someone said, I said, how much of ChatGPT did you use to produce this? And they said, oh, it's just like 20-30%. I said, no, I would have allowed if he said 90%.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think it's also a cultural thing that people are kind of letting go, and then there is also this old guard, so to speak, which says, "Oh, nothing can come close to the way I would write, the poetry that would come out of my words." Guess what? I was a professional writer for many years. I looked at ChatGPT, the blood drained out of my face because I was like, "Man, how do I even compete with this?" Right?
Right.
So I think now I use my knowledge of English to actually extract that kind of
Yeah.
value out of ChatGPT. Yeah. So
Got it. And just final question is on, I know that you use Edison OS for Vizerly. So is it still early stages, or, how are you using it? How's it all coming together so far?
right. So I think what happened is we learned from my crack verbal kind of journey in terms of our tech thing. So I think we were very clear in Perspicacity and Mofo Wisely to use a software vendor. We didn't want to invest that amount in technology and
Right.
kind of. And what we were really looking at is we were not looking at a LMS, because our experience is, if you deal with a company with us, this is my LMS, take it or leave it, and we use it as a SaaS play. We are having, for example, we have a client which has 20,000 people, branch relationship officers who need to be trained, correct?
Right. Right.
So when we are deploying at a large scale, I don't want an LMS where, I don't know what's happening, what kind of
Right.
customization. I wanted a tech partner,
Right.
right? And I think that's where my initial conversations with, Neeraj, right? I think we were kind of
Yeah.
discussing about thing, and I think that's what resonated. And we were able to kind of make that transition. So we have gotten in, a few months ago, and at this point, what we really are looking at is how do we leverage the existing, capabilities of the platform, correct?
Right.
So we kind of have gone in with an assess, but we are very curious to see what is the to be that we could do with the product features, and really look at even generative AI and see what is the best way forward. How do we serve our clients? Because I think it makes for a very good business case for both. Because if we eventually serve our customers, it kind of helps you also meet your goals. So yeah.
Got it, Arun. So you mean to say you're just using the tool for now to deliver content?
Correct. So deliver content and training. So that is our LMS right now. So a client would come, he would basically
Log in.
log into the employees through the Edison platform.
And are 20,000 people using it right now?
No, that particular client is one example. So in
Oh,
that
right.
particular
Right.
case, we had to actually host our content on the client side.
On their
So
platform. Right.
yeah.
Right.
So those are the other things that we also realize that sometimes, it's just we have to go with, some account specific things. Sometimes they want like a single sign on, right? So multiple.
Right. Right. Arun, probably just one closing question before we sign off. How do you see, what are you most excited about tech going forward, um, with respect to the domain that you are in?
Right.
Or what would you be excited? Like, what do you think? You're like, oh, if this happens, it'll be amazing for my business. If
Right. So I think as a teacher, and I've said this long before AI or anything came, we always, I said this thing about I did not, I knew that I could not clone myself,
right,
correct?
right,
But it's no longer true. With AI, I know I can clone myself, right? So the idea really is, as teachers, when we gain this experience, what makes, let's say, me different from, let's say, someone else? I would say I have this experience, that's something that has come through years, and I can't distill it in a bottle, correct? I cannot kind of do this. So I think there is a time where AI can get to a point where teachers can use it as a digital brain, so they
right.
still have the touch and feel factor. So if you want to meet me in person, there is still a person who exists who can answer you real time. But for things you do not need my direct access, if there is a repository which can give you access to all my knowledge, then it kind of makes both our jobs easier.
Pretty much like a avatar of yourself,
Correct.
virtual avatar, who can probably, even in your absence, can kind of behave like the way you do.
But I think it's already getting there, right? I mean,
It's already getting there. Yeah, yeah,
in our phones, we will have something which is wake up in the morning. Do you want to respond to your WhatsApp messages? And
yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah. Arun, great. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you. It was very inspiring and, very enlightening to learn about some of your experiences and how you kind of adapted to certain things. I'm pretty sure the aspiring teacherpreneurs have a lot to take away from this conversation. And trust me, I still can pick your brain in a lot of other aspects, but I'd only blocked 90 minutes of your time, so I'm already exceeding it by 5 minutes. So I'll leave you here. I'll probably get back to you. I'd love to do a part two. I know now more, okay, what exactly to kind of talk to you about and ask you. So probably 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, I'll get in touch with you and see if you'd be interested. And if you want, what I was thinking, you could also probably bring in your wife. We can do as a group sort of a podcast. That'll be a very interesting dynamic, is what I was thinking, if she's interested. So yeah, these are the thoughts that I'm having as of now. But yeah, totally looking forward to your episode being published, and we will keep you posted about all the things that happen from here on. But thank you so much, Arun. It was
Great.
a
Thanks.
pleasure.
I appreciate having you, having been here. And I hope
It was
this
a
was
pleasure.
useful. Thank you.
It was very much.